We might as well call the meeting to order and go ahead and get started. We've got a alternate that's being sworn in. He should be back up in any minute. That'd be okay, Tom, to go ahead and get some,
Yes, sir.
get the ball rolling a little bit. I want to welcome everyone to the September Wilson County Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. We have a prepared agenda this morning that's been advertised. If anyone wishes to withdraw or defer their case, they can do so at this time. And if not, we will go ahead and proceed as the agenda is printed up. We have a court recorder here that's provided by the county. If you would like a record of your case, that would be available at your expense, and you would need to see the court reporter after the meeting. If you plan to make a statement in front of the board, you need to be sworn in. We'll do that at this time. If you would please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give to this board to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. At this time, just a quick reminder to silence or turn off your cell phones.
Hold on one second.
Yes, sir.
Man, he showed up.
Okay, all right. Good deal. We started without you, but go ahead. Commissioner Williams, Justin Manning will be our alternate, okay? You're still sitting in, but he will be our alternate for today. You deal with that, Tom?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, all right. If you would, please come to the podium when your case is called and give us your name and your address for the record. Then you'll also be available to make any statements you wish regarding your case before the board. After the applicants had a chance to speak, then we'll let others in the crowd speak regarding that case if they so desire. I'd also mention at this time that the planning staff has made recommendations to the board regarding each and every case, and the board will be using those references as we render our decision. To the board members, you have the minutes from last month's meeting, which would have been August. Are there any corrections or additions or anything to the last month's minutes? If not, do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Everyone in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, no.
Who was the second?
Oh,
Blake.
Oh, thank you.
And then I guess that we're ready to get into our case. I will say that state law requires us at the beginning of our meeting to have a chance for anyone to make any public comments. This is not regarding our agenda or any cases on our agenda. This is just at a public meeting, we have to give anybody, if they want to come forward and make a statement, we have to give them that option at this time. Not seeing anyone, we'll move into our first case.
Okay, do you want me to just go ahead and cover them?
I'll read the first one and I'll let you got it.
right.
Let me get my paperwork in order and then I'll turn it over to you. First case is 4118. Ryan LaTrapelli is requesting a variance of 12 feet from the north and south yard setback requirements of 20 feet. The request will allow the proposed house to be 8 feet from the north and south side property lines. Applicant is also requesting a variance from the lot width requirement of 125 feet. The lot is approximately 80 feet wide. The property is located at 974 Point View Circle, Lot 38, Point Spencer is Group A. The lot consists of approximately 15,000 square feet and is zoned A1 agriculture. We will get staff recommendations.
Mr. Chairman, the applicant is requesting a variance of 12 feet from the north and south side yard variance, or side setback requirements for primary buildings, which is typically 20 foot. And again, as you stated, it would leave 8 feet. We have went ahead and added, just for title search purposes and everything, a variance of 45 feet from the minimum lot width requirement of 125 feet. This lot exists as an 80-foot wide lot at the building line, so that would be a 45-foot variance need there. The zoning ordinance states that primary structures on A1 zone property must be a minimum of 20 feet from the side property line. However, this is an older lot of record, with the lot being created on March 28, 1962. For the benefit of the public and the board, We did not adopt zoning in Wilson County until approximately 1974. So this lot predates the zoning ordinance and would be considered a grandfathered conforming, non-conforming lot. As such, staff can recommend approval of the variance.
Okay,
And there is precedent for such variances in this community.
okay. Who do we have here representing case 4118? Okay, anything you want to say or add?
Nothing outside of what's already been stated. I think he hit it pretty well. I purchased the property, and it doesn't meet our needs from what we thought we were going to get out of the lot to build the property that we desire and the home that we desire. So seeking this variance to obtain that.
Any questions from the board? Yes, sir.
I got a question. The back side of the property looks like this. What's back there? Just woods?
Yes, there's a large piece of land behind our property that's owned by another entity.
Okay.
But there's a lake off to the north side of it behind the other home there. That home owns the 2 lots that are south of it. They sold us this property. And then the south lot of it is another individual that lives in that neighborhood that purchased it, and it's just going to be a septic tank. His home, he's building about 1,000 square feet away, 1,000 feet, sorry.
Okay.
Any more questions from the board? Anyone in the audience care to speak on this case?
Can I ask a curious question?
You have to come to the podium and give your name and sign.
If you would, sit down,
Just
sir.
for the record.
Okay.
It's Rachel Benton.
Address.
948 Pointview Circle is what I'm here for, and I think you said that address in this case, did you?
974.
974. Okay, we're neighbors. Hi.
Yeah, we have,
Nice to meet you.
we
I was
actually,
like, oh, but I heard
we do
that.
have 2 cases on the agenda this month.
Okay.
From Point View
Okay, I was
Circle.
just making sure.
Okay.
Okay. Was this the case you wanted to speak about, or?
No.
No, okay, you're fine.
Okay.
You're here for the short.
Okay,
Yes.
Okay.
all right. If nobody else cares to speak, all right, we'll close the public hearing, and any comments, questions from the board, motions?
I'll make a motion we approve based on staff recommendation.
Have a motion?
Second.
A motion and a second. Everybody in favor, vote aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Okay, the next case will be 4119. Jay Skinner, on behalf of Garth and Jeannie Crownover, is requesting a variance of 7 feet from the east rear yard setback requirement of 40 feet. The variance will allow the proposed addition to be 33 feet from the east rear property line. Property located at 600 Confederate Circle, Lot 42. Hermitage Harbor is Group B, Parcel 31, Wilson County Tax Map 51N. The property consists of approximately 26,000 square feet and is zoned R1 residential. Staff recommendations?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicant is requesting a variance of 7 foot from the east rear yard setback requirement of 40 feet, leaving approximately 33 feet to the back property line. The zoning ordinance states that primary structures on R1 zone property must be a minimum of 40 feet from the rear property line. However, again, this is an older lot of record, with the lot being created on March 29th, 1955. Again, we didn't adopt zoning in Wilson County until 1974, so this would be considered a grandfathered non-conforming lot to begin with. Given that fact, staff can recommend approval.
Okay, thank you. The applicant for case 4119, please step forward. Name and address, please.
Hey, Jay Skinner. My address or this address?
Your address.
Where you live, yes.
Oh, 4636 Lebanon Pike in
Okay.
Hermitage.
Anything you care to add to the comments?
No, just need to, we're trying to do an addition for these fine people so they can live in their house more efficiently, and I hate to word it this way, but age in place, maybe? Yeah,
Aren't we all?
right.
This is a corner lot, so even if it weren't a older lot of record, it's unique in that our corner lot provision has 2 front setbacks, one of which can be 1.5 times the standard side setback, but it also has 2 rears. So the internal lot lines that are not facing a road are each considered rear yard setbacks, whereas if you went 1 lot down, the 2 internal lots on the sides would be considered sides and have a smaller setback, so.
All right, any questions from the board? Yes, sir, come up, give it, name and address, please.
I'm Garth Crownover, 600 Confederate. We want you to consider this favorably. We would love to stay in this house. We're wanting to get the laundry room and the parking facilities up on the main level. We've been there 43 years, and we plan to stay there. So, thank you for your consideration.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Anyone else care to speak to this case, 4119? If not, I'll close the public comments and for the board. Any comments, motions?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve, we have a second?
Second.
Second. Everyone in favor, vote aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Carries through. Okay, moving down, our next case will be case 4120. Sean Smith is requesting a business use in order to have an indoor sports training facility on A1 agriculture zone property. The property is located at 163 Ligon Road, Lot 1, Ronnie Anderson property, Wilson County Tax Map 80. The property consists of 5.01 acres. Staff recommendations on case 4120.
Mr. Chairman, this one is a little bit different. This applicant is requesting a business use on an A1 agriculturally zoned property, a sports training facility, and as such, sports training facilities are not a specified use or a use permitted or a use permissible upon appeal in A1 zoned areas, nor can the business really be classified as a home occupation as we understand it. This is basically, if I understand correctly, a place for teams to come and train in an indoor facility. So it'd be more than one customer and likely more than one employee on site as well. The language in the zoning ordinance states that the business carried out in a residential property under the parameters of a home occupation should adhere to the following guidelines. Have no more than one employee who does not reside in the home. The business should operate out of the home and utilize no more than 25% of the usable floor area, up to 1,000 square feet. No article or service be sold or offered for sale on the premises other than that produced by such occupation. And number 2, such occupation shall not require the alteration of buildings, new construction, or equipment and machinery not customarily used in residential areas. Given the language in the zoning ordinance, staff cannot recommend approval of this commercial use in an agriculturally zoned property. My understanding, just for benefit of the board, is they're predominantly looking at using this structure in the back. This is the residence, and they're predominantly looking at using this structure in the back, which is a larger pole barn type structure. And I get cases confused. I believe I've been told by one of my staff members who's spoken with the applicant that they already have some of the training equipment in the barn, but it's been used for personal use, like for their own child or children. So that's what I know about it, and I don't know if the applicant is here to speak on it or not.
All righty, who would be the applicant for case 4120? If you want to come up.
Yeah. Hey, my name's Sean Smith. The information he has isn't totally accurate. There won't be teams playing it. It'll just be one kid at a time, or maybe two if they're brothers or sisters. It's just basically it's a school to teach kids how to play baseball or softball. I do boys or girls, whatever. I've been coaching for 42 years. I've coached Southside Middle School for 6 years. Wilson Central High School's girls softball team for a year when a coach was terminated, and I kind of took over. I do have 3 kids. It was originally built for them, and all 3 of my kids played college baseball or softball. And my oldest son is actually coaching at Smith County High School right now. He might use it every now and then, but not for high school purposes. It's basically just a, I don't know, part-time gig for me. I was an insurance agent for 32 years, sold the business, so I just wanted to try to do it right, basically.
Not that it has any relevance to this, and I'm sure you're unaware, but you coached some of my kids when they were playing baseball.
Oh.
20 or some odd years ago. That has no relevance to this case.
I've coached for a while out here. I mean, one of the things I like doing is, honestly, kids today don't get enough exercise. They communicate on their telephones. They're not in shape. They're not confident in themselves. And when you teach kids to do stuff and they have success, they tend to be confident. And that's kind of try to do it right. It's not a big money-making gig for me, but it at least paid for itself. Baseballs cost $7 a piece, softballs are $10. It's a lot of money to get going. And the facility is already decked out with baseball stuff, so. The other thing is I could do it at another place, but the problem would be I'd have to charge a ton more because the overhead would be crazy. And right now I own it. I don't owe anything money.
The comments by the letter of the ordinance have to stand for what they are. They represent the letter of the ordinance.
Right.
I will say that you guys consider character varying and things like that as well in your deliberations. And when I was out there, this is a larger lot, fairly relatively sparsely populated around it. So that, based on the applicant's testimony, I can't see that it would, on the ground, cause a huge adverse effect as long as it stayed in the scale he's discussing. But
And the guy that's next to me, Mickey, I've known him really well. I coach his kids, and I've talked to him. He has, and everything else is like, he owns behind me and to the left of me. That other side is a huge, you can't even see through it. There's so much trees growing up, but I don't know who owns that.
And it's your testimony that the facility is already there and it was built for your personal use and your kids' personal use.
Right.
That's how it came about. So,
Well, and I helped other kids just like,
right.
like Wilson Central softball team practice there when I coached them. Something like that.
What, I guess this is for Tom, at what point, and obviously there is a point where, you're a dad or whatever, and you've got kids, and all the neighbors' kids come over and play in your backyard, or your...
if he has a group of friends over,
Yeah, I know, but
no question.
and I know he's going beyond
Yeah.
that, but where do we draw that line?
That's a hard question, and I'm going to discuss it later in the meeting, not officially,
Right.
but there's something I want to show y'all, for y'all to consider, to hopefully make some of these type cases a little bit easier to delineate. But respectfully, that's part of why this board's here, is for unique cases. So,
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I did want to state that someone did get a permit back in 2015 for the structure. So it was permitted.
All right, is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak to this case here? Yes, sir. Commissioner Haskell.
Haskell Evans, 5925 Franklin Road, and current District 12 Commissioner, of which Mr. Smith is a part. I've never had a complaint on Mr. Smith. He's been an asset to the community. He volunteered at Southside coaching there. He coached to other young men and women over the years. I drove down Ligon Road this morning. If y'all are not familiar where it is, it was created when 840 came through as an access road to access the property down the side of 840. There's a grand total of 14 houses through there. Mr. Smith's is the first one. You could have a Christmas parade going to his house and the neighbors wouldn't know it. It's not going to be disruptive at all for what he's wanting to do, and I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience care to speak? Yes, sir. Please come up. Give us your name and address, please.
Not used to public speaking. I'm Darren
Me
Hyder.
neither.
I live at 3317 Franklin Road. I actually back up to it on the other side of 840. I actually live in Ronnie Anderson's house. So I have a large shop that I permitted, and I want to know if he gets allowed to do this, can others in the same area be allowed to do the same thing?
That's a good question. I don't know if I'd refer this.
Well,
Each
I would
case
say-
stands on its own.
Each case stands on its own, but it does set a precedent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so where do,
Yeah, it's a valid question.
okay.
Valid question, valid concern, I suppose.
You said you have a shop that's been permitted? I didn't understand.
Yeah, I pulled permit for it back 12, 13 years ago.
Okay.
And it's 3,200 square feet. It's a big shop.
Right. I think that's what he's got, 3,200 feet, but yes.
And the building inspector came out and was very hesitant. You're gonna run business out of here, right? I said, no, this is for personal use.
Right.
But he was very insistent that it would not be used for a business.
Well, and I think to that point, there's a difference in having one or two kids out here learning how to swing a bat or pitch versus somebody doing a tool and die shop or a mechanic's
Right, they're-
shop where they've got several cars in stockpiled outdoor storage, possibly stockpile of equipment or materials, things of that
Yeah,
nature.
but who's
and
going to
deliveries.
tell him when to stop? Are you going to step back in
Well,
and say
that's-
2 kids is too many, or 12
Well,
kids is too
that's-
many, or?
That's a good question, and that's sort of what we were trying to
That's what
parse
we're
out with
hashing out
testimony.
here.
Okay,
Some-
I just
some
want to make
degree.
sure we're clear on this before
Right.
variances are given and,
Yes, sir,
you know, that it's fair for everybody.
absolutely.
Mr. Chairman, I've got a question for Mr. Smith.
Yeah, go ahead and we'll, come on back up. We'll get you in the audience in just a second here.
What this gentleman brought up is a good point. We try to decide where's the line that you draw before it gets out of hand. What is your plan on, is it going to be a daily, weekly, how do you control?
Yeah, it
what's
would
the
be,
limits?
it would be night, well, it'd be like, you know, from 3 o'clock after kids get off school to, I don't know, 7 or 8.
You have 3 children at a time, or 6, or 1?
No, the only time I'd have one. You just can't coach more than one if you're trying to teach a kid. Maybe 2 if every now and then. Sometimes I work with brothers or sisters or that kind of stuff. So, I mean, you'd have an average of 1 car. 2. I will say this, I'm not letting teams coach it. It's just a lot. One of the reasons I want to do this is just liability. I don't want a liability. I live right in front of it. My place, we're not going to do something like that. It's just literally just to help
So you're not
kids.
going to have a dozen cars parked? out
No, and I'm not letting teams. The only other one I ever help go there is Wilson County. That's just because Wilson Central didn't have an indoor hitting facility for the girls.
And I would assume that the kids would be coached or would be by appointment only. I mean, they wouldn't just
Definitely by appointment.
randomly be showing up.
No, and it's not a full-time gig for me. It would be part-time. I mean, like, I'm leaving this weekend to go for 3 weeks down to Florida to coach baseball down there, so, but with a totally different organization. The other thing is, like, I help kids get to college. I've probably helped over 100 to 150 kids in the last 15 years get college scholarships that would not have been able to do it without me. Or at least, I mean, I point them in the right direction.
There's no doubt what you do is very admirable, and there's a need for it. It's just what it comes down to is this the right location or not? And you know, so we have to, that's what we as a board have to really hash out.
Gotcha.
I mean, you know, what you do, there's a need for it, it's good for the kids, and, you know, so that's good. Yes. Was there someone else who wanted to speak? Yes. Okay, one more question.
Yeah, sure.
Just quick. In your absence, let's say you're going to be gone for 3 weeks. You've got other people listed here as principal members. Would they themselves, in your absence?
The only one would be my son. The only one would be my son who coaches at Smith County, and he can't coach anybody that's on Smith County senior or anything, but every now and then he's had people, because he's been a college coach for the last 4 years, so. But honestly, it's probably not his main thing. He just got the job, so.
I thought in the application there were 3 individuals listed that had kind of not a resume, but a background that
Well,
you described.
the whole reason for 3 for 3 is because I had 3 kids that was 3 for 3. That's batting 1,000, and you know, it's kind of silly, but you know, it's.
Okay,
my
I just thought there were
daughter played
3
college.
coaches that there were.
No. It's
Okay.
my daughter has she's in the medical profession. My middle son coaches at, he coached at the University of Arkansas last year, and now he coaches at Southwest Florida down in Fort Myers. He don't live close.
Okay.
And Malone wouldn't be full-time anyway, but he's a really good coach. Kids like him.
Is that your son you were discussing?
Yeah, that's my oldest son.
Smith County?
He's the head coach there.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, all right, I think we got a couple more in the audience that want to make comments, so if you will let you guys come forward, please.
It's Rachel Benton, and I'm here for 948 Point View Circle. But you know, when y'all do like short-term rental stuff, how you circle back and you're like, hey, here's your permit, but you need to come back just to see how it's doing in like a year. Maybe something like that would help regulate it without stopping it.
Right.
Just a thought.
I'll turn it over to staff. What she's recommending, if
That's-
we were to approve it, we could put a 2-year, 1-year time frame on it.
That's certainly something you have the authority to do.
And that way, if it became a nuisance or got out of hand to the neighborhood, then.
He's required to come back and
He would be
reapply.
required to come back. That's what she was suggesting. Okay, was there someone else who wanted to speak? Yes, sir. Come forward, please.
I'm Troy Cantrell. I live at 547 Ligon Road. I'm about halfway up the dead-end road there. And I do have concerns about the traffic. I just found out about this at the last minute. And what I did read on it, it says he's going to be taking people up to the age of 75. So there could be endless traffic going in and out there all day, or it could end up that way, is my concern. I've been living there for 27 years, and I kind of like being out away from commercial businesses. And is this gonna benefit the other property owners? Is this gonna up their property value? Is this gonna make this, start zoning this commercially?
We're not going to rezone anything. It will still be zoned exactly the same. That's not, we won't be rezoning anything
Okay,
at all.
so then that really wouldn't benefit anybody else on that road. In Franklin Road, when we first moved out there was no traffic, none. Now you better stop at the stop sign when you come out the end of that road. And now
I think that applies for pretty much all of Wilson County today.
And it's coming from both ends of
Yes, sir.
Franklin Road, and we're about halfway of that.
Right,
So now, if this starts right in the middle, you see where I'm going with this?
right,
And all the other neighbors that's around, like, plus the concerns that he brought up.
right, I understand.
Who's going to say when to stop and,
Absolutely.
you know. So anyway, that's my concern.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
I got a question, Tom.
All right,
Let her go.
okay. Come on forward, ma'am.
Robbie Hyder, 3317 Franklin Road. I think that was my husband earlier, and actually that corner in that top left is actually the edge of our property.
Right here, ma'am?
Yep.
Okay.
I didn't see it.
Oh, I'm sorry, right here.
I'll look behind me. Yes, sir. I'm also concerned about the precedent, and there's 5 acres there, and I don't know that even coming back next year, once you allow that, you're going to be able to stop that. You know, I was really angry when the city did what they did with Bates Ford, because I had all the signs up, but I couldn't find any information about it to do anything, and thank you all for sending this letter, or we would not have known. I don't know how you stop it, but, you know, we're being closed in, you know, on both ends, and, you know, if this works, you know, and he wants to, you know, his son retires and they want to, you know, open a big gym or something there, who's to stop them? And that's definitely something I don't want, because we have 10 acres on the other side of the road. I plan on leaving that to my grandchildren.
Right.
And I don't want them in an industrial or commercialized neighborhood.
Right. All right, thank you. All right, anyone else in the public care to speak? All right, yes.
A question, Tom.
Yes, sir.
The lady brought up about putting maybe a stipulation for a year or two for them to come back. What about in the stipulation we put the amount of children or adults that are training at one given time,
You can make that stipulation now.
which would control any potential traffic problems? I mean, we're talking about one car.
Yes, and I would say that you were going to lean entirely on the record of both whatever motion you make as well as the testimony of the applicant in that case. And the reason I say that is for the building inspection, zoning enforcement staff to enforce that, unless we come out there and we see, you know, a party going on in terms of cars and vehicles just stacked up with people getting out to go practice, we're not going to necessarily know that there's that they've got 3 in there instead of 2, I guess is my point. Because this is an indoor facility, so once they're inside, we wouldn't know anyways, other than just if somebody had a concern, we'd drive by and look at how many cars are in the driveway and maybe send a shot across the applicant's bow and call him or contact him and say, hey, how many people you got coming these days?
That's what I was gonna say. If
I'm sorry?
anybody that lives in the county would have a right to put in and make a
Yeah.
complaint. In writing, make a complaint if there's something they violated.
Mhm.
And then they would be brought into this meeting
Yeah.
to discuss the violation.
And
And or whether we agree to extend it or not. For example, the Airbnbs, you usually give them 2 years, they have to come back. Fireworks stands, they're given 1 year, then they have to come back every year.
Similarly, on the short-term rentals, and I may refer to Mike on this one if he wants to weigh in, but a lot of what we do here is based upon people's sworn testimony and their application. So if they state that, for instance, in an Airbnb, they've got 3 bedrooms, 2 people per bedroom, they're going to have 6 occupants, or we put that requirement on them, there's not a zoning inspector standing in the back corner of the house making sure that when they rent it out that there's only 6 people coming in.
We don't ever
So
count heads.
We're going based off of good faith and sworn testimony and application and your conditions. If we see something, or if somebody complains and says, hey, the police came out to an Airbnb, for instance, and there were 27 people at a party last night, and y'all said there'd only be 6 people ever, well, then we've got some evidence that maybe they're not doing that, and that the beauty of you putting in some sort of incremental approval is it allows you to come back and address that with the applicant if they're not unwilling to address it before then, you know.
And then the extension could be denied.
Yes.
Okay.
But that being said, by the letter of the ordinance, we cannot recommend approval of this, so.
Right. And not to get,
Staff cannot.
not to get too far in it, but, you know, the neighbors' valid concerns about this being a commercial use in a agricultural residential zoned area. But, you know, the owner has a right for home occupation. I'm not saying this qualifies under that, but anybody in the county has a right for a home occupation. Some of those could possibly have as much or more foot traffic than what this has. Am I way out of line in making that statement?
No, sir.
And
Particularly
that is
when,
allowed.
particularly when you talk about gun sales or insurance, something of that nature.
Okay. All right. Do you have anything you want to weigh in on this?
I don't think y'all covered it pretty, it's just one of those that tough to see.
Right. We make the big money for, huh? Yeah.
Why we gather ones.
Okay, yes, ma'am, you'd like to
I would.
come back?
I had a question that when we're talking about, you know, putting the limits on that, I mean, I'm thinking that we would be the only 4 neighbors that would know about that. How would the rest of the area know that
Well,
if they pull by and they're having a big party, is this a
Right.
ball party or we're
I
having a
will-
birthday party?
I'll try to address this as best I can, and I'll let staff touch up on it. But if we were to approve it and put a 1-year stipulation on it, then they would come before this board again in 1 year. You would get a notice they were coming before this board, just like you did this time. During this past year, if you had seen, I don't know, school buses or tons of people up through there, then you would come before this board a year from now, and then under sworn testimony, you would testify, well, this is what we've seen. I don't know, should they have pictures, or I don't know, or during the year, I would think you could call and file a complaint with staff. You could say, this is what's going on. Y'all approved this, he said this, but we're seeing something totally different. Is that
Yes, sir.
correct?
Yes, sir.
That would be how you would want to, I guess, address that.
And that way, when it came back up for renewal, we would have record that there had been
That they weren't being compliant.
instances of non-compliance that were at least perceived by neighboring property owners. And if we can confirm that there was a non-compliance, obviously we would, you know.
Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
Just wanted to help them out. I've had probably 30 to 40 to 50 teams ask me to use this place for, you know, just to use it, and I'm just not going to do it because it's just too much liability. As an insurance agent for 32 years, it's just, we wouldn't do it.
Right.
It'd be just the offer, the offer.
All right. Anybody else have anything to say? If not, we'll close the public comments, and we'll put it before the board. Any discussions, questions?
I got one thing to say. Just for the people out here. We don't make the rules, the county commission does. And we have some leeway sometimes to kind of stretch the rules a little bit. But in this case here, the rules are pretty evident. And the county commission has decided many years ago, these are the rules. So my position is gonna be is to deny it.
All right, anybody else have any comments, or we have a motion or anything?
One comment for the record, to ensure that what we decide today is not a blank yes, whatever, or a no. So don't get any wrong impressions. Just because we vote one way doesn't mean that's the way it is in the future. So,
Okay.
My issue on this is not for this facility at all. I'm an athletic fan. So I'm not going against what you're doing. My issue here is setting a precedent of what we're doing on that road with all the land for the neighbors. Once you start that, you're gonna have to go through everybody, probably the 14 homes, if they've got all the land with 14 homes that come back in front of this board. This is the rule. My issue is where are we drawing the line as far as agriculture and commercial? That's the problem that I've got with this.
And not to interrupt, but this does or does not set a precedent throughout the whole county. This doesn't just apply to Lincoln Road. This applies.
It doesn't for the whole county.
Exactly. This sets a precedent to some degree for all
Not
things.
just
But
Lincoln
anyway.
Road, exactly. You're exactly right.
But anyway. Anybody else on the board? Comments?
I'm going to say there's a lot of these facilities through the county that didn't come in and take the proper paths, where you're wanting to set up a true business with liability to protect yourself. I think that that's going on throughout the county in a lot of facilities, and I think that that does help it be affordable to parents, not to be a legitimate business, more so as a cash business.
It's a tough decision. It's like I said earlier, at what point, there's kids in backyards all over, playing ball together, and the dad's a coach, and he's giving back. He's doing exactly what this guy's doing, but on a different scale or different level maybe. They're doing it in garages when the weather's bad. I don't know. And
Well, and I can speak from an enforcement perspective. We've been in on a couple of those, Justin. And I will tell you, it's very difficult when they look at you straight face and say, this is my team that I coach, and I'm not charging any money. Well, I can't ask them for a receipt book or lack thereof, or their income tax statement or anything else as a zoning inspector, whether it's me or my inspectors. So it is a very difficult enforcement thing on the ones that you're talking. I'll call them under the radar operations that you're right, we do know are going on, that people can just claim that they're having their son's baseball team over, either for a party or for a practice session.
And then I think this gentleman brings a valid point. We don't let him do it at his house, so he has to go build this, he has to go buy a commercially zoned lot and build this building. Then it becomes cost prohibitive. I mean, then the kids can't afford to do it. So I don't know. There's a lot of moving parts to this, and I don't know that there's a good answer for anybody anywhere. But sooner or later we're gonna have to quit talking about it and do something. I don't know. We've closed the public comment, but so anyway. But she was wanting to speak again. But anyway, we've kind of already closed the public comment. But as a board, we can always defer it. But we have the facts. I don't see as deferring. There's gonna be anything. It's not gonna be any easier to make this decision next month. I don't foresee, unless anybody thinks there's any new information or anything that's coming forward. Tom?
No, sir.
No. All right. So the floor is open for a motion.
I'll make a motion we deny based on staff recommendation.
Have a motion to deny based on staff recommendations. Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a motion to deny and a second. Everyone in favor of the motion to deny, say aye. 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 Those opposed to the motion to deny, vote. No. All right. Let's do a show of hands. Show of hands. Though the motion is to deny, those in favor of the motion to deny, raise your hand. That's 3. Those opposed, raise your hand. Have 2. The motion was denied.
All right. The applicant does have the right to come back in 6 months, but then only with new information.
All right. Thank you, board members. That was a tough call there. But anyway. All right, well, moving on, we'll get to, get organized here. Case number 4121. We'll let everybody settle out for just a second.
Haskell.
All righty, case number 4121.
I've got something on the
Brooke
agenda.
and
before.
Cameron Morris are requesting a variance of 20 feet from the north rear yard setback requirement of 40 feet. The variance will allow the proposed house to be 20 feet from the north rear property line. The property is located at 1069 Tate Lane, Lot 6, Hamilton Creek, parcel 103.04 on Wilson County Tax Map 53. Property consists of 5.17 acres and is zoned R1 residential. Get recommendations from staff.
Mr. Chairman, the applicants are requesting a variance of 20 feet from the north rear yard setback requirement of 40 feet. The zoning ordinance, and let me kind of explain where these setbacks are, because this is an odd-shaped flag lot. This would be the front property line for setback purposes. This would be the rear property line for rear setback purposes, and these two would be side setback required, okay? So he's asking for a 20-foot variance to only be 20 foot from this property line, all right? The ordinance states that the primary structures on R1 zone property must be a minimum of 40 feet from the rear property line. This is not an older lot of record or tract of record, as it was created in June of 2021. We have stated that it is not irregularly shaped. I would say that's in the context of a flag lot. It's not irregularly shaped. It is a 5-acre tract. So staff feels that there are ways to get houses on there, on that tract, while not having to request the variances. There is a blue line stream that does, so we cannot recommend approval. There is a blue line stream that affects the property when accounting for a 30-foot required buffer zone. That blue line stream is roughly in the middle of this tree line, kind of curves up into the property and back down and back up. I believe if you look at the plot plan, the applicant's wanting to put his house somewhere right in here, actually, just beyond it. But he's got to observe a 30-foot buffer from the end of the blue line stream. But even if he does that, I think we were calculating up, if he accounted for a 40-foot setback, he's got a little bit over 100 foot of depth within which to build a house.
That's 30 feet from any edge of the...
From the center line of the stream, but being that this is the end of the blue line on our mapping, I would say that it would extend 30 foot beyond there as well, but.
Okay.
All right, who is the applicant for case 4121?
And my figures I gave you about having 100 feet are not survey grade, they're just doing our best on the online county mapping to use the measure tool.
Okay. Yes, sir, go ahead, name and address.
Cameron Morris. Right now, my address is 3188 Poplar Hill Road, Watertown. So I just wanted to clear up a few things. The part that he was saying where he said we're wanting to build further that way, that's actually the septic.
Septic's over here.
Septic is what I have on this sheet here has it. I don't know if I can show you this.
We have it.
Okay.
It's a hatched area, correct?
Well, I'm just following the kind of you can see the stream on there in lot 6. The back, that little, I don't know what you call that shape, kind of like a triangle shape that's gridded, that's the septic area back there. And so we're more closer to the middle where the tree line starts to dip in, right there. That would be the back part of where we can build from what I have on the sheet. And so what you see is where it kind of dips down the tree line, we're wanting to put our house there. Now, technically, on paper, the front line is, like he said, the bottom line, and the top line would be the back part of the line. But on everyone that's building in there right now, all the
They're
houses
facing
face
their
that way.
houses this way because there's a common driveway that feeds all these houses.
Yeah, that driveway is technically, we own that land there, but
So that the house faces out toward the 50-foot right-of-way.
The house, all the houses that have been built here are facing towards here because there's a common drive, the aerial doesn't really show it, but there's a common driveway that goes up through here and dead ends.
Which that means you kind of put the houses long ways as opposed to the.
exactly, which tightens the space.
Right.
Because our houses, the plans we have are going to be,
And
it's a little
actually, it
wider.
doesn't dead end, it comes back into Tate's Lane.
Yeah, it's like a loop, yeah, that's right. Tate Lane, there's a common drive that's going to be shared, that is shared right now that goes through, comes out on Tate Lane on both sides.
And these were all 5-acre tracts, so there was no planning commission review per se by state
Well,
law.
how is this Blue Line Stream going to affect this?
Other than they have to recognize that it's a blue line stream and they have to maintain a 30-foot buffer off the center line of the stream, or off the top of bank, actually. It affects where they can put a house, because if you think they've got a 30-foot setback by zoning, well, that would typically be from this line, and that would mean they could probably put it right in here somewhere, but because of the blue line stream, they've got to move it back this way. But even so, if you account for the standard 40-foot setback, by our rough calculations, it looks like they've got 95, 105 feet of depth to work within there. So it's just a matter of, I guess, the house design itself, which is
Picking a house that
kind of
fits in the building.
self-imposed.
He's
Yeah.
got a building envelope there, and he's got to put a house that fits that
Yeah.
building envelope.
30 foot is not an issue.
What's
The
that?
30 feet that you've got set back is not an issue with where you put your house?
The 30
No,
foot
I don't
off
think,
the
I don't think
stream,
so. Yeah, but it's.
it does
the-
push them back to the north.
Yeah,
That's the
and,
reason I want the variance.
yeah, and so
If it wasn't for the 30 foot,
It
they
is,
could
it's a
come
stream
up
bank.
and then they, right.
Right.
So that 30-foot buffer is from top of stream bank.
And I do want to say there, just with the way the land sits as well, there is, we want to put the house, there's like a flatter area that it just makes sense. The further we go towards the creek, the much more of a drop. There is just going to be a lot more dirt that we'd have to bring in to try to level that out.
Well, it
And-
could be more inclined for flooding. I don't know the specifics on it. I don't know the elevation on any of this,
Right.
but it could be. Okay. All right, is there anyone else in the audience that cares to speak to this case?
You want to say anything?
I'm Brooke Morris. I'm Cameron's wife. So I
Address,
guess,
please. I know it's the same as this.
3188 Poplar Hill Road,
All right,
Watertown.
thank you.
Yeah. So the only other thing I would add is technically with that being a back line, the way our house would sit, that's truly a sideline, I guess. So I know on paper it's a back line, but it would be the side of our house if we continue to face the same way that the other houses are facing. And the reason that we want to move over closer to that line is because of the drop off and to get further away from the creek. So.
If, I know it's not, but of course they're gonna turn their house with, so when you go on side, it's gonna be a side yard, even though on paper it's the rear yard. Side yard setbacks are less than rear yard.
20 foot.
Yeah.
This is R1, so 15 foot. And I will say, if you're looking for a reason to approve it, we're going again by what the zoning ordinance
Yes,
says, and we have to, but that's what this board's for. If you're looking for a reason to approve it, while it's their decision what house plan they use, and therefore I don't think that constitutes a hardship, I will say that the configuration of each of the houses that have been built to date in this same subdivision have all been front-facing towards the common drive. So they're actually designed in such a way that it looks more like this would be the front yard of each of them,
Right.
these would be sides, and this would be a rear. And if you took that perception, where they're building, they're going to far exceed a 40-foot setback to this line if it were to be the rear,
Right.
and far exceed a 30-foot setback on the front if this were to be the front. But
The way it looks on side, they
Yes.
would meet all setbacks.
there's a housing configuration issue overall in the neighborhood that you might take into consideration. That being said, I don't believe that selection of a particular housing footprint by an individual constitutes a hardship.
Right, okay.
We also had originally put 20 feet on the paperwork away from that back line, but we could make 30 work if 30 could be approved.
you're saying that instead of getting a 20-foot variance, you could live with a 10-foot variance.
So it'd be 30 foot instead of 20.
So it'd be 30 feet away. Is that correct?
Less
30
is
feet
always
away.
better, or, I mean, you know, the less of a variance is always, from my point of view as a board member, less is always better. So if you could live with less of a variance, so that, we could amend that to your request would be for a 10-foot variance from the north yard setback.
Yes.
Where you need, okay. That would allow you to be 30 foot from the property line, correct?
So instead of 20, it's 10?
Yes,
They're asking.
requesting a 10-foot variance. They could,
Well, it would have to be in your motion at this point because their variance request is
okay.
for 20. Yeah.
Okay, any further discussion? Anyone else have any comment on this case? Any discussion amongst the board? Comments, motion?
I have one for Tom. Tom, you said that all the houses do face towards this drive. Are they in a line down through there?
That's my recollection.
Okay.
Now, they're all very large lots, so they all sit about the same locale in the lot.
Okay, based
on each
on
one
the
of them. But that is a private drive. We had nothing to do with it. It's not a public road, so on and so forth.
All right. Yes.
I'm Rachel Benton. I'm here for 948 Point View, but we actually own the old original farmhouse. I can't remember the address because the address changed after we bought it because of that county road. But as a neighbor, I am for it because the houses do face that way, and so it'd be super weird if a house had to turn the other way. And it's been a nightmare as an owner with how they did all of the lots. Like, my husband and them have had issues with, so like whoever subdivided all of these, it wasn't really perfectly done. And maybe it's because they didn't have to come get approval for stuff. So just if you took that in consideration, like as a neighbor, I would be for it because I think it'd affect our property value if they had to turn their house a weird way.
Where do you
and be
own
weird.
property?
So see the original house, like the green lot, right there. So that's our property. We're going to fix it up. It's not going to be our primary home anymore, but we bought it for our primary home. So in the coming weeks, we will be doing additions to that house and fixing it up so it's the same quality as the houses around it. But that's the original. That's what has other structures on it. That house is not part of the development, so it was excluded from like the neighborhood regulations and things like that. But the neighbor house next to it, like if they had to build sideways, it would just be really weird because you'd be looking into the other neighbor's house, like for privacy. And I think everyone, like when we bought it, we want to be private. We want to feel, I mean, y'all all know Tate Lane's amazing. My kids call it the hideout road. You know, you want to feel hidden out. And so if they had to turn it, that would be unfortunate. But you're the professionals. I just thought I would give you my viewpoint.
All right, thank you. All right, we're back to the board to have comments, motions.
I'll make a motion to approve based on the request, I guess we'll request from 20 to 10 feet. And also, do we need to put in there on the 30-foot buffer for the stream?
No, that does not
That's
bill.
part of law.
That,
Okay.
you could add that as part of the reasoning for, yeah, there's nothing wrong. Actually, we have a motion to approve the 10-foot variance from the north rear yard setback, and I may amend that and add part of the reason is because of the stream there.
That's fine.
And then I will, so we have a motion and then amended it, and then I will second that motion. Tom, is that clear? Somewhat? Okay. All right, we have a motion and we've seconded in approval, and that is for a 10-foot rear yard setback. All right, everyone in favor, vote aye. Aye. Opposed, no?
Did you second it, Perry?
Yes, I did
Okay.
second, yes. All right, the motion carries through unanimously. All right. Case, let me get my papers in order again. It's the case we've been looking for. The last one. All right, case 4122. Kaylee Harmon, on behalf of the Benton Group, is requesting to use the property as a short-term rental. Property is located at 948 Point View Circle, Lot 25. Port Spencer is Group A, Parcel 6 on Wilson County Tax Map 270. Property consists of approximately 16,000 square feet and is zoned as A1 agricultural. Time, you have recommendations on
Yeah.
case 4122.
The applicant is requesting to use the property as a short-term rental. Staff has received a business plan stating how the applicant considers using the property. If the use is granted, staff recommends that the business plan be made a part of the approval and put the applicant on notice that if they're to add any sort of structure or expansion to the use of the property, they'll need to come back before the board for a plot plan submittal and or a revised plot plan submittal and revised business plan approval. The business plan does state that the maximum number of guests allowed per stay is 8. The proposal also states there are 4 bedrooms in the home. If granted, the board typically approves 2 tenants per bedroom to make sure that the septic system on the property can serve the intended use. Staff will need the PERC records of the original number of bedrooms in the home to designate, or the original number of bedrooms in the home to designate a maximum amount of guests. The business plan states the caretakers are located 8.1 miles from the short-term rental. That's per a requirement of short-term rentals or bed and breakfast that they be within 10 miles. Should there be a problem in the middle of the night, that their contact information has to be submitted to emergency dispatch so that they can contact them if there's an ambulatory issue or a fire or a police incident. And it also needs to be turned into the building inspector's office so that if we get complaints Monday morning, we've got somebody to call. So Airbnb short-term rentals are a use permissible on appeal in the A1 zone district. Given the language in the zoning ordinance, staff can recommend approval. Again, if the board approves the request, the applicant will have to make their contact information available to WEMA, the building inspector, and the county sheriff's office. Lastly, it's not in the comments, but we typically make you aware that another provision of the short-term rental use on appeal listing in the residential zone districts is that they are to be approved incrementally. Traditionally, for a first request, you guys have approved that for 1 year, requiring the applicant to come back after a year. If there's not any major concerns brought forward to address, y'all may consider a longer increment for second or third request or thereafter.
All right, thank you. All right, and you're here, you sure?
Rachel Benton, you probably wish I was first since I've been up here so many times. Rachel Benton, and this is 948. I actually personally live at 1004 Brookstone Boulevard in Mount Juliet, which is kind of close to Tate Lane. But so this property was originally purchased as a remodel and kind of fix and flip. The neighbor beside it is a short-term rental, and the house would not sell because it's a shared driveway and a short-term rental. So now we're pivoting, so we don't have to. So we can afford to keep the house. We're pivoting and doing a short-term rental. We have a short-term rental in Mount Juliet at Gilly Road, and I came before you guys a few months out, like June, I think it was. Maybe it was earlier than that, but we've had really success there, no issues with the neighbors. We run our short-term rentals just like a business. We have 3 cabins in Gallatin. So I've got a channel manager, and what that means is any tenant that comes on the property also signs a secondary lease while they're there, and we hold security deposits, and that's to weed out any of the tenants that would not be fair to our property or fair to the neighbors, to prevent parties and things like that. So we have secondary measures in our process, and we've got a property manager, we have a crew that goes, like a cleaning crew, and that property manager, plus we live really close. So our goal is to first make sure there's no issues, to protect our asset and then also protect the neighborhood. But the house right next door to it, not the cabin with the red roof, but the other one, so to the right, that's an existing short-term rental. And I don't know if you guys have history on that or not, but.
Okay, thank you. Any,
I have one question for the speaker, if that's okay, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
You said your name is Rachel Benson?
Yes, my name's Rachel Benton.
We
I
have
own
Benton. Okay.
Benton, B as in boy, E-N-T-O-N.
Okay.
So Kaylee had to come submit the application. She's my employee. Is that what you're asking?
No, well, we have the owner listing as Ruth Ann Davis.
Oh, that's wrong.
That's a typo? I'm sorry.
Okay.
So who is the owner?
The Benton Group, so it's
Benton
our
Group.
company. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so for clarity, it's not Ruth Ann Davis, it's the Benton Group.
And you know,
And my staff confirmed that, it's a typo.
yeah, and if you pull that right now, it could be under, because we're in the middle, so originally it wasn't bought for this, it was bought as like a fix and flip, basically. So it could potentially be under Benton Group Investments, but that will change to the Benton Group. We're in the middle of the lending
I
process.
just want to make sure
Okay.
that we were speaking to the owner or the owner's
Yes, yes,
agent.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so just so you know, if that
All right.
does, we'll swap on tax
All right.
records.
That was on my
That's
side, so
yeah.
no worries.
Y'all got all that cleared up?
I do.
Okay, good deal, yes.
Karen has a question or comment.
Mr. Chair, I was gonna add that I do have the septic records, but there's no bedroom approval on the septic records.
So it's an older one.
It's an older one, the septic records are dated in the 70s, 73.
So there's not a number of beds?
Basically, how we handle that, whether someone's pulling a new building permit or doing something like this, is all we can ascertain is that they have an approved septic area and it's functioning. That's basically what the state of Tennessee gives us in an inspection letter. So if they're saying it has 4 bedrooms, we're going to go on the assumption that they've got enough septic.
It's not an inspection letter, though.
Okay.
It is an approval. I do have, I think it was a repair, and I do have a final approval, but it just does not have the number of bedrooms that it was approved for.
What
But
if
I do
it-
have the records.
If it makes you feel better about the septic, like we make sure we do like the Rid-X and the toilets quarterly, we get them we just had it pumped because this was gonna be a cell house. So, we made sure that it would pass inspections and everything was good when we did any of the repairs. So like it recently was pumped and cleaned, but then we also have maintenance. So we don't have to have an issue backing up into the property.
All right, good deal. Yes.
I have a question. Looking through the rules you've established, normally in the rules, there is a period of quiet time. I don't see anything listed in your proposal for quiet time.
We can add that. I think it was, is it not on there?
Don't see it in
Whatever, in the city, like 10 PM or something, 9 PM, and we can add it. And
I
I'd have
believe-
to look at our Oakwood Hideaway. Well, I call it Oakwood Hideaway. We have one on Gilly Road, so I could just copy that over.
We
But
would
we're
probably
totally
need to
fine
know
with that.
we need to either part of our motion or it needs to be a
In
part
there.
of something in this, not
Right.
something you're gonna.
Yeah, we're totally.
We'll make the business plan, I would assume, part of any motion for approval, but you may want to add that, and quiet time shall be from 10 PM or 11 PM to 6 AM or 7 AM.
Yeah, and that'll be really easy for us to add because all of our short-term rentals, like we have a long list of rules and that's like in that lease. So that'll be really easy for us to add in there and knock on wood, like
Do you remember if it's
I
10 or
haven't had any issues with parties because of how we stipulate.
10 to 6.
The only issue I've ever had at one of our short-term rentals is someone trying to actually move in, but like no parties and no cops being called for anything like that and the other properties we own because we are pretty strict on the front end and we charge a security deposit of $500 and that really weeds out a lot of people. Kind of like a hotel, we hold that money for them. And so often we see more families traveling or older adults and we don't let anyone under the age of 25 rent. So it really helps
So
remain peaceful.
So typically, y'all have been ascribing a 10 to 6,
10 to 6.
10 PM to 6 AM.
So you put it in the business plan, so when somebody's gonna rent, then they know.
Yes. And it's in the rules. Like when they rent, they have a lease. And I wish I could pull up my phone and show you. Like we have that in there because like in my Gallatin and at Gilly Road, like you have neighbors. And so it's a big deal for us not to have complaints in the neighbors.
This is a better set of rules and plans I've seen.
Oh, thank you.
All right, well, do we have anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak to this case? The audience is pretty slim, so nobody's wanting to speak to this case, okay. Do we have any more questions or a motion or anything? Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Do you
ma'am.
have any issues at all with that shared driveway?
Well, to sell it, it was.
That's concerning for me.
So
I'll
the
be honest.
shared driveway was a doozy when we were trying to list it because people didn't want it. And what we found is with these lake lots, there's a lot of shared driveways. I guess to get so many houses on lakefront. And the neighbors that do their Airbnb, they actually have guests parking in the yard. And I looked up their short-term rental because I don't want this house. Like, I want it gone. I don't want to manage it. Like, it's a job for me. So, like, we wanted to sell it, make a profit, and be done with it. So when I was doing my research, the owners to the right, they have, like, what are the things you call in a parking lot that you pull up to and it stops? Like the big concrete barriers?
Curb stops?
Yeah, curb stops. They have those in their front yard, so they're telling their tenants to park in the front yard. That way they wouldn't annoy us, because there were people that lived there before we remodeled it. So in order to make their short-term rental not annoy the people who were like living in that house, that's how they went around it. So really, when people are in that Airbnb, we don't see, I've never seen anyone use that driveway except us when I've been there. But it still that Airbnb prevented us from being able to sell it as a primary residence because no one wanted to be next to an Airbnb. So that's why we're creating an Airbnb, because now we're like, crap. Well, the market shifted, so people that can take out a loan with that interest rate for that type of house, the buyer pool's fewer. Then the ones we had come through that were wanting to make an offer turned away because that's an Airbnb and a shared driveway. So that's why we're like, oh gosh.
And respectfully,
we'll pivot.
none of that, I think, concerns the board.
Yeah, but that's why we're doing a short-term rental, and the shared driveway, I guess, is what it is and how they did it when they developed the area. I would prefer not to have shared driveway, but.
All right, we've heard testimony. Do I hear a motion or any more comments from the board? I will move that we approve this case 4122. I'll move that we approve it for 1 year, and then the quiet time will be from 10 to 6, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. And then obviously the testimony given, and then the rental business plan, all of that will be a part of the motion. I would ask that you would put the quiet time on your plan when you rent it out to people. Is that adequate, Tom? All right, I have a motion. Have a second.
I'll second.
Have a motion. Have a second. Everyone in favor, vote aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it.
Thank you. Can I ask a question? Do we get a notice when we need to come back for our approval? Like when
All right, and then, Tom, are you wanting to?
Who made a second? I'm sorry.
I did.
Okay. Yes, I wanted to go over, this turns out was more pertinent than I thought to this meeting actually, but you may recall about 4 months ago, and I didn't call out a specific case, we had a case where somebody had an auto repair business whereby they were repairing or tuning Mazdas, as I recall, across the country via computer. And staff at the time had some question about, well, that may be well and good under a home occupation. It had arisen from a complaint because the guy had Mazdas parked all over the yard. Turns out those are every one of his Mazdas, and they're all serviceable and tagged current and worked. So that wasn't anything we could act upon. But when we got up there to look at it, of course, he had his one off-site employee in there working at the computer doing an online tune-up for somebody in Michigan. But he also had racks in the other part of the accessory structure that had parts in it. And there was a pretty round-robin discussion at that time. And I will tell you, it mimics sort of what we're dealing with on the enforcement side about the gig economy and about people increasingly having side occupations, side hobbies that they take part in, making it increasingly difficult to determine kind of that delineation that somebody mentioned in this meeting between out-and-out commercial use and a viable home occupation. I do not promise that what I have put here, and this is not here in an official capacity, I'm not asking you to act on it or anything else. But everything in red is largely new information. I think I did find one oversight where I added something about no more than 1,000 square feet. It's listed in red, but it's actually, I think, a part of the current home occupation provisions. But other than that, everything else in red is things that I've added to try to better differentiate.
Yeah, it's a tough issue.
You know, for instance, one of the things, and I'm not going to call this out specifically, I'll just say in general terms, one of the things that tends to bother people when they have something that's claiming to be a home occupation next door to them that maybe gets out of scale, has to do with the amount of equipment in the yard. Also, commercial dumpsters, because unlike your regular trash pickup, usually commercial dumpsters getting emptied at 6 in the morning. Sometimes even on Saturday or Sunday, and man, you want to talk about griping somebody, let them get woke up to bang, 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 with the dumpster getting empty. So one of the things I state pretty clearly is, for instance, under A, if you look, no use of commercial dumpsters or commercial waste receptacles beyond use in relation to temporary on-site construction or roof repair, just like any other residence. If you've got a roof getting changed out, they're probably going to have a dumpster out front where they're throwing those shingles or a set of tarps or something. So, you know, just like any other residence, we're going to afford somebody the ability to have that kind of dumpster. But if they got a dumpster there where they're dumping off HVAC boxes or something, and that is a part of their business where they go out to somebody's site to repair their HVAC, really, we don't want them bringing that material back to the site to be disposed of. I honestly would prefer that they not bring the equipment to the site, but given what we did on the previous case I talked about, I think y'all determined that as long as the deliveries were within a reasonable scale and amount, like a couple of UPS trucks, that's really no different than somebody buying something on Amazon. You know, Amazon's at my house 3 times a week, whether I want it or not. And,
Sometimes 3 times a day.
Yeah. And
Amazon, FedEx, UPS, they don't ever coordinate.
Yeah, so.
Like passing a driveway.
And certainly that may be something I need to actually add more about, but, and again, these are all things that we're going to have to take people at their word or on testimony to do. But if this is not the right way to go, this is, the people it affects the most are us as enforcement officers, the county attorney if we get into a lawsuit, and y'all. I have not brought this to Planning Commission. I probably will hand it out to them tomorrow just to get some input from them, but it really, this is more of a back and forth between you guys and the county commission, who ultimately approves such rules as home occupations. And I'm looking for a little bit more clarity and ease of enforcement from a selfish perspective, but also a little more clarity about what constitutes and what does not constitute a home occupation. So if you guys can look at that, if you've got any input, get back to me. I'll be glad to consider it or discuss it with you.
I like this. This will help, because probably what I feel like I'm doing up here, the toughest part is the case we had with the ball. I mean, that's, really pulls that.
Absolutely.
That's tough.
Yeah, there's just not a.
But the guy that stood up here and said, I got a permitted structure that's a large shop, and they were real persnickety about making sure it wasn't commercial. That's right, our inspectors were asking, because when we get these larger scale buildings that people are building on tracks now, they can very much easily be turned, even if you don't intend to, when you sell to the next guy, next thing you know, you got a car mechanic next door to you, or a tool and die shop in a residential area, and they're banging and welding and doing all kinds of noisy stuff all the time, and got stuff strung all over the yard. And the guy that built it may not have any intention of that, but then when he moved out, somebody saw that and said, I can put that in there and not have to buy a commercial lot. And at some point, some of those things are more prone to needing to find a commercial or industrial lot as opposed to being in a residential area. This guy with I probably shouldn't editorialize too much, but where he's trying to do little practice sessions, he might very well, at the scale he's talking about, be able to undertake that under a home occupation. And nobody ever be the wiser, but I think he wanted it for his insurance purposes. He wanted the endorsement that he was allowed to do it there, and he couldn't get it. So,
Would this, I haven't read through or studied, would this really have had any input on him? I don't want to break it in specific.
I've not read it. I've not read what I actually wrote in the context
Pertaining to him, right?
Yeah.
I understand. Right. Okay. All right, good deal for.
I think help clarity is the big thing.
Well, and I don't know if this helps clarity or muddies it up more, but y'all look at it.
Okay.
I think it helps.
All right.
All right, thanks, everybody. We're done.